you want them, you can. And that's really important to know, that you can get a chance to make those cream puffs anytime you want and get a chance to play with that filling. We'll be getting a recipe for a pastry cream filling. That's a really simple one, but you can use any kind of fillings, and even just dipping in chocolate. So we'll start with the pâte à choux dough. Then we'll go on to some puff pastry I've got rolled out here. So we can learn to make some simple palmiers by buying just buying regular puff pastry. So you'd end up seasoning it or flavoring it the way you want. Palmiers are those tiny little spiraled into themselves cookies. I usually make them kind of small, but you usually buy them. They're served for breakfast, for dipping in your coffee. They're also named elephant's ears. That's another name for them. So the big ones take a long time to bake, but I like to make mini cookies for your desserts. Say you attend restaurants that in Italy, for example, you have a layering of desserts. So you'd have a beverage, you'd have a dessert, and then you'd finish with little petite cookies or petit fours, things like that. And then you'd have your coffee at the very end. So that's an experience in itself. That's not required at all times. So we'll get a chance to do the pâte à choux dough. I'm going to go through is a simple 1 stick of butter, 1 cup of water goes into a pot. You'll add, salt and sugar, and then you'll be finishing with flour and eggs. So I'm going to bring that over to us so we can get started. The next part, I have fruit tart pie, how to do a lattice over a pie. And then I want to not miss out. If you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. But I want to be able to start with the things that we have ready to go. So I want to move a few things because I have my oven ready. I'm going to move some pies out of the way here. So the pâte à choux, I'm going to bring you to the stove right here, camera. Let me know if you have any trouble. Let us know if you have trouble seeing what's going on. Move our pies ready to go because it will show you the lattice top for that. This is our tart. This is our gel for our tarts, our fresh fruit tarts. And I want to be able to get my whisk ready to go. Baking racks here. So I've got my butter. It's almost melted in my pot. So I've got 1 cup of water and 1 stick of butter. I'm going to grab my salt and my sugar. Calling for 1 teaspoon. Watch my hands, use my hand and do my teaspooning. So of course you can measure exactly in the half teaspoon of salt. So you can use any kind of salt. It's not restricted to kosher. So I'm just doing a half teaspoon. You know, I can measure. There we go. Now we're going to be adding to this the 4 large eggs and egg whites. And I didn't know if I had a chance to show everyone how we separate eggs, but it's been really easy to do that when we have containers separate that we prepare, because we want this to move pretty fast by our stove. And then what we'll do is put this in a pastry bag. Our dough, which is made hot, our dough stays warm. We'll let it cool for a little bit, and then we'll pipe it out to get it into the oven. And then we'll bake them off right away. And that's the fun part, is getting them baked off and seeing your successes. And before we do that, I'm going to keep this here. So I'll turn this front flame on so you can see better. There we go. So I want to keep this hot. I've got it to a boil already. My salt and sugar is in. I'm going to get my flour ready to go. Okay, so I'm gonna keep this, now that it's hot. I don't have to keep it on boiling because I don't want to reduce my water. I need that moisture in there. So I'm going to go ahead, and I don't have to sift my flour at all. But the flour is going to be the important part. That's going to show the thickness, and I'm going to be just whisking it in. Can everyone see? I'm going to whisk my flour, go right in, start whisking. 1 1/4 cups of flour.
How much sugar are you using?
It was only 1 teaspoon for the batch. If you want to make it a little sweeter, that's fine. You can see that my dough's thickened up right away. Yep. And while it's hot, I still have the flame. I'll get that. Keep my whisk on the side to get the dough out of there. You can see it's almost like making a roux, but it's got water in it. So I've got my flour. Now I'm going to get my eggs ready to go. And as I put this aside, I'm going to have you take a look right at, so I want 4 eggs and 1 extra egg white. The only thing you can, if you want to put in extra yolks, that's great. It's up to you. But I think the recipe for this is perfect. So I'm going to actually crack my egg on a flat surface. I'm going to go ahead and put it into my container because I want those eggs. So I'll just show you what that looks like really quick. A lot of bakers, and I have to say, when you get a chance to these are jumbos, so I can make that decision and make sure I don't put in too much of those eggs. Everybody hear me okay? Make sure I don't freeze up again. Okay. So I've got my I'm going to turn my flame just back on for a little bit once I've got my eggs incorporated. So I'm going to keep my whisk going right here. Now that I've got my dough, it's going to thin out a little bit. It'll be a little looser. So I've got the single egg white. And my flame is off right now, but I'm going to be able to introduce things one at a time. I'm going to whisk it. As they say, never fight with a baker. They have Popeye arms. Everybody remembers who Popeye was. And I'm going to put in 1 egg at a time. Again, I'm making sure I did them separately so I know I have no shells in my mixture of egg. Again, if you want this to be more savory, for example, you want a cream puff that you're going to use for an appetizer, for example, you wouldn't have to add, you can add just a little bit of sugar, but this is a sweet pastry. And then I may say, for example, I wanted to make some a mushroom cream or sauteed mushrooms to fill my cream puff, that I'm making a large cream puff. Okay, so I've got my mixture together. And I'm going to go put 1 more egg. It's 1 at a time. Break my egg up in there. You want to keep doing this while it's hot. Get a lot of good exercise. For those of us that are left-handed, we switch to our right hand. You can see it's starting to thin out a little bit, but again, I don't have my flame back on. I'm going to turn it on as soon as I finish my 4th egg. And a lot of times your recipes will call for you to add 1 at a time because you don't want to overwhelm and break your dough because you already have that 1/4 stick of butter in there. See, it's starting to get stringy. There we go. And then we're going to tighten it up on the stove. There's my last egg. Move everything out because we have our oven on, so it's pretty hot here. Okay, our last egg goes in. See if I can whisk this toward you so you can see what's happening. I've got a runny, kind of a pancakey waffle dough. Making sure I got no lumps. My flour went in. I don't see any. I got my runny dough. Okay, I'm going to turn my flame back on just for a little bit. I can monitor that. There we go. And monitor it. I just want to dry this out a little bit. Just a little to make sure that I don't have too, because I want to be able to pipe this. And again, I remember that I did use the jumbo egg, so it's going to be a little thinner, so it's going to take a minute to dry this out. That's what we want to do. We want this to, again, you're going to pipe it and it's going to rise. We'll get a chance to do that. So I've got my flame on high here. Switch over. Get a chance to do that on my bigger flame. I think that'll be faster. I'm going to just take that over and bring you closer so you can see what's happening on this side. Much like, you know, when you add eggs to something, you don't necessarily want to let it sit still over that flame since it's just warming up this side. But I want to make sure that I'm drying out my dough. You get to experiment with this. Save that last egg maybe, or just the yolk. That way you can see that you'll have less liquid. If it's, you know, you don't want to cook these eggs, you want to get in those corners. So I'm going to reach in for my spatula. Make sure
And,
I've got my corners taken care of.
and Lorraine, is there a chance to overcook this while you're drying this out?
Yes, there is a chance, but you can actually, you end up having it, you can save it by just letting it cool down for a little bit, and then you kind of start like a half a batch. So I'm gonna move my whisk onto the
And
stove.
this probably would not work so well in a blender, I think, because you need the heat, right?
Exactly, you wanna keep this
Okay.
warm. And I wanna make sure that I'm getting the corners. My whisk doesn't necessarily get the corners, but I can see that it's drying out down below. I want to bring you to that point. So a lot of times they'll suggest that you use a wooden spoon. That's really a kind of a standard operating procedure for using a pâte à choux. You know, whisk it again, starting to thicken up. I realized I was watching making sure that I get those corners so my dough doesn't get stuck in the corners. A little arm tighter. This is why we love to have things we could use. Now, for the Madeleine, for example, for Madeleine cookies, it's a similar kind of dough and mixture, but you can do it in a blender and then just pour from there. It is getting thicker. You can see it's not running as much. I'm not keeping it right on the flame, but I am making sure I'm whisking as I go on the side, because I'm using just a regular stock pot that I use for everyday soup. And notice that I got some. And since we do all these wonderful things live, so I get a chance to see that my dough is still a little nice and runny still, but I'm going to let it keep whisking. Kind of like something when you make spätzle and the other eggy type of noodles, they call it spanking the dough. Something to be able to use. So I'm going to go in and get my spatula again and make sure I've got my corners. Use a nice round wooden spoon. There we go. I'm going to be able to get that. Again, it's a matter of, are you toasting the flour? Let's see if you can do that. It's hard to do. So we're getting a nice thicker dough. I'm going to let this rest at this point. Turn my flame off because the dough I feel is thick enough to be able to let it cool for a little bit to pipe. You want to be careful when you're piping, to make sure that you're going to be okay with that. I'll remove my whisk. There we go. And I see that I want to see at the bottom that I don't have anything sticking. It's doing just fine because there's no flame underneath now, but I can see how the dough, you can see how at the bottom, you can see like the flakes of dough is drying out still. I think on my next opportunity, remembering that I had the jumbos, that I'd probably leave a half an egg out or leave that egg white, that single egg white out. And you want that egg white to be able to do the batch. So I'm going to let this cool right now while we're here. And that way we can pipe it out. I can get it into a pastry bag without burning myself. I do have to let it cool. There we go. All right, I'm going to set this over here. Cool off there. Get our stove cleaned up and we can go on to a little project while we're waiting for this to cool. I'll bring you over to this part of the table and we can see what's happening. I want to be able to show you. We talked about puff pastry. We've talked about, I'm not going to make the pastry cream for you today. I did want to see that you had a recipe for it. Pastry cream is really, it's not as hard as people think. So it's easy enough because there's a stovetop method and it works out really well. And so I want to be able to show you the one technique today. So you can see how we have an opportunity to make. Now this is any kind of fruit tart. I want to say if you'd like to make your own pâte sucrée, pâte brisée, the other doughs, you can use just a basic pie shell that you can purchase. This happens to be made with walnuts. And I want to be able to show you an opportunity to do how to make your own fruit tart with all kinds of different kinds of fruit. It's up to you. But the idea of learning about having, say, for example, we're going to do this one with all berries. And I've got a nice glaze to use for that. So we're going to do all berries. But I want to make sure that my fruit tart, again, you have a fruit tart shell or a fluted pan. It can be kind of deep, but if you actually put cream, custard, or pastry cream, what's going to happen to the fruit when you cut your beautiful fruit and put it in? The fruit's going to sink right down into it. So you want to be able to make that an opportunity. So it can be, if you want to make your shell gluten-free like this is, but I can use a gluten-free cake, which I have just a simple yellow cake here. And I'll show you how we use that technique. What I did was, instead of a pastry cream, I did mascarpone cheese, which is in my mixer right here. And ahead of time, I whipped up some whipping cream, very lightly sweetened, or you can use honey. I'm just trying to see if you can see inside there. Let me bring it closer. So inside the mixer here, I'll show you, here is 8 ounces of mascarpone cheese, and then I'm putting an equivalent amount of whipping cream, but I want to be able to add a little bit more because I've already whipped the mascarpone cheese, so you don't hear all that noise. So we're going to do this really quickly. So mix this together. Grabbing here. So that we're going to start with our cream inside our tart shell. Now I'm using nuts because I like the idea of adding additional proteins. I can make this very keto because the whipped cream and mascarpone cheese are heavy, high fats, and can be used. There's my mascarpone whipped cream together. I want to make sure it's definitely whipped because the mascarpone cheese is like a thick cream cheese. I'm going to put half down in the bottom. I'm going to spread it out with my simple rubber spatula. I can get my offset and get in there and get the corners, but what's going to happen, and I don't want to go too fast so you guys get the idea that I don't want my fruit to drop in. I want my fruit to do a really wonderful thing. Here's my shell, and here's I keep this in the freezer. So I made this, baked it, cooled it, and here I've got a yellow cake. I'm actually going to use the bottom, start from the bottom because I want a round slice, and here I have my bread knife. I can use a longer one. I really like to use the ones and a wheel. Not everyone has a baking wheel, so I just want to show you how to do this very simply. I'm going to put a slice of cake on top of this, finish with my cream again, and then I'll start placing my fruit, and then we'll have a nice warm gel. So I'll warn that you can keep this in your refrigerator and then microwave it for a few seconds and get that pastry brush to gel it right on. So I know that my cake is a little bit larger because I used like a 9-inch for this one. So I'll trim it after I get my slice. I'm not going to see this underneath. So I want to go down about more than about a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to go into the side of my cake. Let me know if everyone can see that. And I'm not going to go slicing through because that might be uneven. I want a nice even slice. So I'm going to start with the side of the cake. Think of Paul Hollywood and how he can do this without using a cake wheel. So I'm just going around and I'm trying to keep the same distance with my knife as I go underneath. Keep going down and around. I know this is going to be a little bit larger than I need, so I'm going to trim it later. But I'm just doing about 1.5 inches into the cake till I come all the way around to where I started. Again, now I've got my knife and I know I've got my trim all the way through. So I'm going to go around one more time, even thicker. It just takes a few more seconds, but this way you know you've got an even slice. Okay, coming around. Sometimes you'll see the chefs do this. They'll run the knife underneath to make sure everything's off of there. I'm very gently going to pick it up. I could also use a piece of cake cardboard and such to flip it over. I have a nice piece of yellow cake. Now I know this is large, so I want to be able to just trim it. And if I had something like a pastry ring, which I put somewhere, my cake ring or pastry ring, I'm looking right for it. Okay, so the idea was to be able to have that, instead of trimming it around, I can just do that and make sure that I've got my size of because this is like a pie shell, but it's got an angle that comes up. So all I want to do is basically trim enough that I can get it. Again, well, I'll tell you about the cakes pieces that are left over and then what bakers do with them. So I'm going to make sure this is just trimmed up so I can fit it in. That's getting better. And then I'm just going to trim my corners. And you know what? When everybody gets to go buy their donuts and they see a cake donut that actually has crumb, that's actually these kind of crumbs and donut crumbs. I'm going to lay that in my tart pan. These kind of things are crumbled up and then they're put on the outside or the edges of cakes. You really, you can take a look, but all bakers are using these techniques, and that's very common and very green. So in case you hadn't noticed, that's what those kind of things are on the borders of cakes. So I'm going to get the rest of my custard that I made with the whipped cream and mascarpone cheese. And I know that in a lot of traditions, berries and mascarpone cheese are really popular. If you want to, again, honey is really nice with this, especially in summer. I'm going to get my very small, just an offset spatula. And I go down, around, again, pushing to the outside. I don't want to overwhelm my crust on the edges. I want to be able to glaze this with a very light glaze if I need to, or powdered sugar. It's really up to you. Again, this is lightly sweetened yellow cake, not very much sweetening in. So I want to even this out, making sure that I can put my berries in. And what I do is I've got my berries. Now there's a lot of controversy about this, but again, in any bakery setting, I'm going to lay out, and what I do in large, and what I did for years in large quantity, is to lay these berries out on big sheet pans. I'm not washing these berries. I did rinse off the blueberries because they're intact. But once there's a stem end, raspberries, strawberries, all these things actually start to just get very wet and soggy, unless you have an instant control over the refrigeration, and you can try to wash them and then get them all on paper towels. But imagine, so I want to look over my fruit. I see there's a leaf here from the blackberries, for example. I want to take a look. Now, it's up to you. Again, you buy organics, you take a look. For years, my fun thing at the bakery was always to look inside my raspberries and make sure there was no little happy bugs in there. Because once you wet these, they start to ruin you would have to eat it within a half an hour or so because they start to get wet and shiny. And you can see a few of the fruit are already doing that because they're sitting out here in the kitchen. So I want to be able to start with my larger fruit first. Do this here so you can see. And I'm doing this because this is what my job was for years. So I'm going to alternate, making sure my stems are down. I've got my huge berries. I try to get them in the middle. I'm starting with my bigger berries first. And I like standing them up. If I had strawberries, I'd cut them in half or quarters and get those in the mix. So this is just a frutti di bosco or wild berries, a mixture. And that way you have a choice and you can prepare this, the morning of, the afternoon, have it ready to go, and then put your fruit on last. And then you can also make these in small quantities. And next I'm going to go with my next size down, my raspberries. Now I can take the time and make a whole rim of raspberry if I like. It's really up to you, but I like the mixture of just having it, let's say, not willy-nilly, but it's actually strategic. Strategically done. I see another leaf here for my raspberry. I want to make sure I'm going to move those on. And we've talked about the strawberry parts, and you know that and I know it's a difficult thing to fathom, but it really is expensive if for any bakery that's trying to give you a beautiful piece of a beautiful fruit tart or a slice of a fruit tart for their dessert menu at a restaurant. I want to see this kind of red, white, and blue, or, we just passed Bastille Day last month. So, you have these kind of fun flag colors during the summers. Imagine, and I'm trying to pick up the raspberries that are not, some of them are getting very wet. You can see the water on the tray here, but that's just them relaxing from being out of refrigeration. So I'm going to see if I have room for. Now, when I do a professional fruit tart that has many more berries, now this is going to be the easy part. I've got my blueberries. I'm just going to kind of sprinkle them in. And I want to fill my holes so I don't really see a lot of that custard underneath. And I'm calling it a custard. It is the mix of so I'm holding my hand on the edge. If I have some more beautiful raspberries, I can put them and fill some other holes. I want to be able to show you this completed. So again, you can stop here, and maybe just fill in some holes. If I have time, I'll go in and put them around the outside. Get my blue rice. I'm standing them all up because I like the height of my pies and tarts. I like to be able to fill those holes. Let's see if I can give it a little shake. There we go. See if I've got some more to fill in here. So what do you think? What kind of ideas would you have if you want to do this with beautiful sliced peaches? I would definitely use our gelatin glaze over the outside. This is actually a vegan gelatin. Again, there's other styles. It really depends on what you want to store in your fridge that you can access anytime you're going to make a tart or something fun. Again, you couldn't use cut fruit like melons and watermelon because that's very watery. Let's see how we can get that together. All right. Be able to have this all together for you and move out of the way. There we go. Grab our towel. All right. So this part will be the easier part where you get a chance to actually have some a simple powdered sugar, or if you want some glaze, that's really up to you. On the berries, you don't necessarily need the glaze. Let me grab my larger. There we go. I had something to sprinkle powdered sugar over, but it was really tiny. So we're going to use a little bit bigger one. And so you can see what that looks like once we finish. So you can see that better in the camera. I'm just going to put a little bit over. I'm just doing this right over the top. Normally I have a bowl already sitting out. If I'm at a bakery, I just have a little bowl. I'm just going to put a little bit over the top. I don't need too much. Again, this is where our knives come in handy. Tap, tap, tap. Just so you control where it's going. You get a little snow dusting. And then you're happy as a clam because you get to put this in the refrigerator and enjoy. It's pretty heavy. I can feel that with the mascarpone being 8 ounces and a good 8 ounces of whipping cream. So this is a good heavy tart. It's got the nutshell, cream, custard. It's perfect because it's not too sweet. Again, the berries and fruits, depending on the time of year that you're getting them, they'll be definitely ready. And then I can show you, I wanted to tell you about the rest of the cake crumbs because a lot of times if you see a nice, beautiful, I'd say dulce de leche cake or certain other ones, a lot of times people don't really know. It's really hard to make your pastry creams and your frostings beautiful on the sides of your cakes. So an easy way to fix that is to take those cake crumbs that I had extra, break them up, and then just hold my cake up and have it frosted and press the cake crumbs on the side to give you an example. And I'm going to set this aside and we'll get our pastry pâte à choux dough into the oven. I'm going to show you, sometimes I've been showing classes with you guys that I've been using foil, pastry, parchment paper. These are Silpats. The original company is Silpat. It's a French company, but they are made in all different ones. I've got some from Amazon. I want to show you other things that come in Silpats. These are really fascinating, is that they can come with instructions just for you. So you can see that you want to measure your cookies. It already has a measurement of cookies for you going around. And here is shells or madeleines. This is a madeleine form. Now this is a smaller one that actually fits in a baking pan that I can actually put the baking pan in the oven. Change out my regular Silpat and get my madeleine ready for us when we do the madeleine cookies. So see, it sits up. And when you're in restaurants and restaurant bakery kitchens, this is a Silpat that's huge madeleines. It's actually a full sheet pan size. It fits across in my oven just like this. That's almost exactly, but I do have to watch it because it gets real toasty around the outside if I'm filling them all the way up. Again, you butter individually. You can flour, you can do that all separately because you don't want them to stick. But the wonderful opportunities for having a Silpat, this is just brand new. It's just been washed and hasn't been used yet. So this will be our first day using a small one. And I'll get that ready for our next round. Now we're going to do our cream puffs. for example, I'm going to get the cream puff dough. I'll use this brown one here with the circles in it so you can see that you want to be able to keep them portioned together. I've got my pastry bag. A lot of times I used to have a lot of cloth pastry bags. And then, yes, I do try to run them through the dishwasher, but I want to be able to use my, my dough now that it's cooled down a little so I can actually handle it. You can see that I've got it a little, my fault. I have to explain that, my apologies, but I see that it's a little lumpy because I did get, still hot. I was whisking and whisking, but I missed those corners just for those few seconds while it was hot. So I want to be able to do that. There we go. I don't think you should be afraid of it. You know, you want to be able to keep that safe. I'm not going to put a pastry tip in. I have easy enough to cut my pastry tip with a knife and to be able to get my pastry bag ready. Now, the one thing you have ready as you're making, pull this down. So my palm is very important when I'm filling my pastry bag. I'm going to lift my dough, shove it in and pull it up against my palm. So I have that as the actual two-sided spatula hand here that you use all that for your own. You can smell in the air, you can smell butter and flour toasted a bit. So I'm going to fill this up here, not be too heavy and too high-handed here. So I want to be able to get that with my cutting board. There we go. Normally, it's easy enough to have a pair of pastry scissors around, pastry shears, scissors, things like that to make it easier to cut. Because if you do cut, you don't want to cut on your silk hats. You don't want to cut holes in them. So I want a fairly good size hole. A lot of times I want to cut, I can cut at an angle, but this is a nice straight cut. Okay, I've got this really large pastry bag, but I want to make sure my dough doesn't sputter and pop out at me, that it has. So I'm not buttering. I'm not needing, because of my silicone pad, I'm not going to need to butter my cream puffs. Okay, and I'm just using gentle squeeze. I've got a little bit of a half twist so it doesn't come out the top, but I want that dough because it's warm. So I'm going to put them about 1.5 inches apart. And I'm just making round ones right now. If I want to make larger ones, I put them on a separate tray because they'll be in the oven longer. I'm trying to come straight up. When I release, for example, you can see I'll release, come straight up. It's going to relax itself. But I'm going to go to the next one because this is going to get an egg yolk or a cream wash over the top because I don't want those little tips to burn. We get a chance to, I'm going to do this faster so we can get it in the oven for you. Again, my oven temperatures. Oh, let me move my. We'll put the tart in the refrigerator for my pâtisserie. There we go.
Chef, where do you get your bags, your pastry bags? And even
they actually, you can get them. I believe you can get them at, say for example, the business Costco. Smart and Final. I'm not sure. I order them online also. They come in a roll. So these are the small ones I can use for icing. They tear off. These are the Métier, is a larger French company that makes chef coats and all kinds of supplies. But you can see it's a really large pastry bag.
Wow, those are nice.
Yeah, they are. And of course, it was a huge roll when I started. So I think it might last my lifetime. So you invest. It's a matter of investing. So I'm going to quickly grab my pastry brush here. I have different kinds of pastry brushes. And I want to be able to grab and I can crack just a single egg into my packaging here to be able to do that in just a simple yolk mixture. But I really like the yellow so I can actually make sure. And I like to crack my eggs on a flat surface so I don't get any eggshell. Got my egg white. I just want to remove a little bit. I don't want all my egg white. So I want the yellowy color. So I'm going to keep that extra large egg yolk. So here I go in with my pastry brush. And I'm just going to, you can get a fork and do it this way. This is, show you the other kinds, different kinds of pastry brushes I use for butter. And this one's been around forever, but it runs through the dishwasher. So I'm just going to break my yolk, mix it together. So all I need is a little bit. Again, a lot of pastry shells. We're going to use the egg wash again. I'm going to come down a little bit and angle this so you can see better. Now, a lot of them can fall over. Well, this is going to be a fun cleanup today. So I've got my egg wash. Now I can see this is what I'm looking for. I don't necessarily want them to fall over, but I have this nice butter and the yolks are in there. So you've got a lot of nice fat, but I want to make sure they're standing up. I'm just going to come across the top and smash my little tips down because they're going to puff up. There we go. I want to see how it's peaked. I want to be able to go in and just pat it down a little bit and get my brush wash on there. So the top of my cream puff will be a really nice shiny. And if you want this to be even more beautiful, you can actually put a AA sugar, which is the more crystallized sugar, sizes of like sugar in the raw. AA sugar is more like the crystallized sugar that we used to get at a place called the Nut Tree, way back. You can actually get colors and beautiful crystallized sugars that you can find. So I'm just going to finish egg washing the top of these and we'll get these in the oven. And then we'll start preparing our lattice for our pie and get that in the oven so everybody can see what that looks like. Okay. So these are
Chef, just a couple of questions. Can you provide the spelling of the pastry bags? And then what if you don't have a pastry bag and you want to?
Whoa, everybody's got that wonderful idea, right? So Ziploc bags, right? You can definitely transfer over to a Ziploc bag. You can actually put your pastry trips, but I suggest you rather use something thicker like the freezer Ziploc bags, because again, this is a hot dough. I can hold on to it right now because it's now warm, but it's a hot dough. So you have to be really careful. I want to be able to, I can come in with just a simple powdered sugar over the top, or I can come in with just a little bit of sugar over the top if I want to change. Again, this is just a pinch, making them a little sweeter. You can avoid that, and we'll leave some plain so you can see that. I'm going to get them right into the oven. I've got it at 400 right now because I usually run it a little hot so I can watch it. I don't have a convection oven. I'm going to move our silpats out of the way, and we'll get on to pie dough. I want to be able to have you use things that you can actually purchase if you don't have the energy or time to make a pie dough in your, that we have food processor recipes. Let's just get everything out of our way here. And to show you the simple ways to do pies. There we go. I'm going to tell you that you can buy this. I want to show you this because it's easy. If you already do pastry doughs and pie doughs, then it's easy enough to learn that, but you want to be able to start to get, since I have this apple and apricot pie ready, I have the pie ready to put a topping on it. And I want to be able to show you how to do that. So we're going to I usually use parchment paper down, but I love my cutting board. There we go, and move our mixer back. Ooh, that's heavy. So this is how I'd like you to try it, because this is going to be an easy fix when you're in a hurry and you have wonderful apples or you have beautiful fruit in season. Now, this is what we use for making ravioli and making all those cute little castellated tools. I have the double-sided for pasta. I have also the single. You can get them almost anywhere, but you can also use a pizza wheel and a regular knife. So here with my scissors, I just want to show you what the pie dough looks like, because again, you can buy a pâte brisée and all buttercrust dough. They come frozen. You can use puff pastry. I'm going to pull one out here and get that. And again, there's no paper in between the roll, but you just have to be careful that you have it at room temperature while you're making it. And I want to show you just how to roll it apart, and you'll start to see that you don't want it to tear, but I want it to come all the way out and apart. So I'm going to put a lattice work on my pastry. Here's my parchment sheet right here. I'm going to roll out my dough. Now, things that you want to do with your pie, for example, and I want you to be able to fit this over a regular 8 or 9 inch pie. This is the actual shell that you can use for bottom and the top. So this happens to be roasted apricots. My sister has a tree up in Santa Rosa. I just couldn't eat them fast enough, so I ended up putting them in the oven. And underneath is sliced apples with a little cinnamon and sugar. If you need a basic apple pie recipe, that's something to look forward to and take a look. Now I've got my egg white mixture, and I'm going to put the rest of that egg white in for this particular pastry mix. So I want to do this first because this is going to make it easier for me. I don't necessarily want to put it over the top, but I'm not going to put any sugar on yet. Okay, so I can do it two different ways. And then I want to say to Lewis and everyone, I'm not looking at a clock right now, so I want to make sure I don't run over for you guys. I love to keep doing things, so head down.
We have about 45 more minutes. But you're doing
fantastic, because I've got things in, I want to watch the things in the oven. And I have my temperature gauge, so I'm going all the way around. And I want you to keep it simple for yourself. So you know you have this pie, and I made it a little mounded. I don't want my dough to sit here very long because it's going to go right into the oven. I'm going to grab my pasta wheels, and I just like the castellated look. It really depends on how you like it, but this is going to cut through the dough, and I'm going to go strips about less than 1 inch wide, and I'm going to start a pattern here that's going to be really simple. So I just want to be able to express that in a beautiful way. Now, other choices, pie shell right over the top, and then be able to pinch it all the way around, connecting to the dough underneath. That's perfectly fine. Making sure that you put fork holes in it, or you can actually cut little tiny cookie cutter, tiny holes to just make sure there's room for it to steam and not overflow into your oven. The other options is mixing some oatmeal and some butter and some making kind of a Dutch crunch topping also with oats. And that can be going over the top too. You really have a lot of choices when it comes to simple pies. When you're doing a peach, you really want to make sure that you have these tender, you're going to eat tender, but you don't want to make the topping tough to eat. Let me take a peek at our cream puffs. Now in the oven, they're rounding around, and we'll get a chance to look at them again while they're giving more color. So I'm going to go straight down the middle first, so I know where my middle is. That's what this is something I came up with years ago. I just want to keep it simple for myself. I'm cutting. I like the castellated look because it's just quaint. It's got that lacy kind of look because we're doing the lattice work on the top. I'm going on either side, and maybe they won't be even. I'm doing this real fast. Get a ruler. I know it's possible in a lot of very strict baking corridors. I want to be able to use all this. All of this is going to be used on the edges. And it only has egg wash on it, okay? So again, you're going, choices are changing for vegan, not really an option because normally you'd be using heavy cream and things like that. So I'm gonna finish my lattice here. Oops, see, I didn't do that right. I'm jumping the gun. Don't pay attention to the person behind the pink chef coat. Dun, dun, dun. There we go. I like to get a lot of information to you during the time frame here. So what I'm going to do now, I have my pie, and you can see my lattice work here. My start. I'm going to go for the middle pieces. I'm going to make a big X. I want you to see the simple X. So I've got the middle taken care of. Here's the middle. So now I want to be able to go under and over. Now it doesn't have to be perfectly under and over. It would be wonderful if you could run it one way and then run it the other. But you know that your larger pieces are going to be needed for the very center sections next to these two. So I'm going to go across here. Now my next one here is either side, up to you. But I want to go down. I'm going to lift up and go down that way. This is going to be really, and I'm going to go to the other side. And I want to go under there also. Okay. Now I'm going to go the other direction. Now I got this one that I cut very thin and cut it off in the center. So I can't fix it, but I can go over because this is already over. So I've got under, and I flip them like that. So my really naughty section that I messed up, I'm going to put that right underneath this particular piece. Now I want to see if I've got them too close or too far away together. Here we go. Now, the process here should be pretty simple. So my next one's going to go over these two and under this one. So I'm going to flip it over, and I can flip this one over on this side because I'm going to do exactly the same thing. And I'm going to go out. I'm going out from the end, from my center, picking out the dough. Okay. Again, this is going to be great for venting. Here I've got exactly the same. How did I not do that right? So I'm doing it in the opposite direction. Sorry, I'm just like looking at that. Okay, so I can turn the pie at any time and start on the other corners. This way, I got to do this side. So I know I've got over, under, over, under. So this is going to be the opposite of that. So this is going to go under this one and under this one. So I'm going to grab, working my way out from the outside. Flip it down, turn again. Now I've got the same here. I want to go under this one, right? And then under this one. And keep my dough straight. Now what I do is, see, I turn my dough because I know that I have a rounded edge because I use this pre-made pie dough. There. I turn one more time. Again, this is over. I want to go under, under, and under. There we go. And we're getting near the edge of the pie. There and there. I'm going to turn one more time. Trying to see how, just not to dissuade anyone, that you could actually get this done. Under, under, under. And the dough's not going to crack. It's actually nice and moist. And you've got it egg washed. I'm going to come back down. Now, is there one section I need to do? And that looks like right here. So I've got this long piece, which I didn't finish cutting here. But again, I'm at the edge of the pie. And I've got these two pieces I can use. So again, this is going to be over, under, under, and under. And I'm going to put that here. There we go. Can everyone see that? Okay. So I see that I am almost finished, but what my next step is to take my opposite side cutter. I can just go in and cut this off because I got this extra pieces sticking over. You can also use a paring knife. Keep it simple for yourself so you know that you're not getting too much. This pie is not going to rise. The dough will rise and give a nice crust, but the pie is not going to rise. So you won't worry about stretching out the dough. Now you can get, I already have cinnamon in my apple mix, but you can also take, as something else you'd like to have seasoned on the outside. You can make designs. I'm just going around and cutting over my hand because this is not a blade. It's not a sharp blade. Again, the métier, I will put in the chat, I'll go ahead and put the pastry bags, but you want to look for pastry bags on a roll. I want to say, what's this? In San Francisco, we have the, cash and carry kind of places. They're really for restaurateurs. There's other stores for bakers. There's online, Amazon. I'm going to put my dough here. I'm looking to see if I have any major holes. I don't want to pat it down. I really like the idea of just putting my dough and attaching it. Now, because I've got the egg wash, I can tuck it under a little bit if I like. It's up to you. You don't necessarily have to do any of the finger pressing because it's going to rest. As it heats up, it'll rest down onto the lower layer of dough. The last thing I want to do is grab here. I'm just grabbing it by hand because it's what I do. And then I've got a handful of sugar. I'm just going to use my wrist turned to the side. I'm just going to let it drop out of the bottom. And this is the helicopter effect you do with salt, pepper. Just give a little bit because, again, this pastry dough is not sweetened. So it's going to be really bland. And I did not put a lot of sugar in the filling, but that's it. That was my little palm. That was about a tablespoon of granulated sugar. Now this is going to go on a pan, or I like to just put a Silpat right in the oven shelf. So I'm going to go in here and I'll bring out the cream puffs so you can see them. And I'm going to put the pie right in the oven, right on top of my Silpat. You can also use, everybody can use foil, of course, anything you like. It's really up to you how you and your baking like to work together. Again, your oven should be a happy oven. I'm going to take my bakery towel and show you what's happening here. Here's the cream puffs. Again, I've got a little bit of a yellow color. I want to make sure that I'm going to keep them, that they're going to bake all the way through. I don't want any raw. There's the bottom. It's a little golden. Whoops, definitely hot. So then I'm going to flip this back over and put it on the top shelf. I've got my pie on the bottom shelf here in this oven. Can everybody see that? Sorry. So we'll have that come out of the oven right before we close out our class today. I can keep typing more pas de choux, and I want to make sure that we've got plenty of time to do the rest of the simpler cookies. and I've got my other pie crust to do my other pie, but I'll do that later. But that way you can see that it's not necessary to have a fully covered pie when you worry about everything bubbling out of the edges of the pie. Okay, we'll come back with our puff pastry and rolling pins. Now this is pretty simple because palmiers are a butter puff pastry dough. We'll go right here. A butter puff pastry dough. Again, you can purchase pre-made puff pastry. It won't be sweet, it will be savory. So that's really the thing to look forward, look toward, that when you're buying something, you have all this. I don't want too much flour. I want to be able to embed my egg wash and my sugar. Okay.
And Chef, on the pastry, is it rolled out to the desired level, the desired amount that you need to use? Or do you?
I'm going to roll it out more myself. This is a frozen dough, and everyone's probably heard of Pepperidge Farm. I'm going to bring the show back over here. Pepperidge Farm makes 2 pieces. You get this size in your frozen. You get 2 of these. And I divided it into 3 panels because I want to show you that with this baby 2 1/4 inch size that I would make my palmier cookies. One, I want to get my baking pan ready because this is an easy and fast cookie to do. Get my Silpat ready because that's why I like these work really well in the dishwasher. You want to sanitize them. I love that. And here, I want to show you what you don't do when you use a cutting. I think I had made a huge batch of fudge and I cut all these squares. And of course I used a really sharp knife. So this one's been around, but I don't use it for much anymore. So I want to show you what costly, investments in saving foil and parchment paper by reusing these wonderful Silpats. I want to make sure, right?
Chef, I too have one of those cut up Silpats at home.
They hang around a long time and they do get dark with age. I just have to show you that it's Williams Sonoma and online Amazon. I showed you the ones I got from Amazon. Those are all easy enough to do. So I can see, that you have, when you get them, they're in this lighter color and then they get a little darker as you bake with them. So I want to show you that. I'm going to put this down. What's really nice is it has the cut corners here. So they're there so you can have it for easy lift off. If I'm making sheets and sheets of cookies coming out of the oven, I can actually slide this off right onto the top of the other cookies as they're cooling. If I'm not worrying about the height of the cookie. That happens a lot with chocolate chips. So I have just a simple rolling pin. This one that you have, you oil them, you keep them oiled. It's really great because the wood still absorbs, but it's really nice. I'm going to use this one because you can see it against the white parchment better. Some are for pasta dough. This is the for French style, so it has a height and a narrowness at the end that I can use. So I'm just going to use it down the middle. I will take this piece off here so I can show you just one section and do one at a time. I'm rolling it first. I'm just going to roll a little bit. I don't need much because I want that puff pastry to stay nice and long. And I'm going to use this in a log shape because that's why I want you to learn these cookies. They're so easy, nothing to worry about. You can get them done. Egg wash. I'm going to egg wash and sugar both sides. This is just a sugar and puff pastry. I want you to load on the sugar because a lot of it's going to come off while you cut this up. Because we're going to cut this up in little pieces and lay them on their sides in the oven. And something I want to share, what I will do is show you that something my husband gave me a gift. Cookie sheet baking size, so it's exactly the size. He's like, these are my presents that I get. So it comes in exactly the size you want for your parchment. And so here's the easiest way to start that. And there I have my Silpat underneath, but I'm going to grab a lot of sugar. And I'm going to actually make this cookie really tasty because remember that puff pastry is not sweetened at all. It's a savory puff pastry. A lot of times you see the Pepperidge Farm sells it also in the tiny little They sell them in little flower shapes that you can actually use as a recipe used to be quite famous called chicken a la king or turkey tetrazzini, these kinds of recipes. Okay, and I've got the rest of my sugar. I still have more. There's no measurement of sugar when it comes to this recipe. I can put in cinnamon. I want a little bit of very ground cardamom. I want a mixture. I want my sugar to be all over this. See how I just be able to get a nice thin light layer, but I want to press it in. I want to make sure all that egg wash is actually that part over here. So I want to make sure I have enough because it's going to come out as I'm cutting. I know commodity-wise, sugar, eggs, flour, everything's quite expensive. I'm flipping it over. We're going to do exactly the same thing. We want our egg wash and our sugar to stick. Again, do you want to use 00 sugar? You want to use something like a coconut sugar? You can try different things. Again, working with different, studying with my diabetes, I was learning to use keto sugars, which were erythritol based with monk fruit. This is me baking for catering. It's tempting, very tempting to eat all these wonderful things. So everyone use your own discretion. I'm going to show you this one piece. So here's the palmier style. The reason you want to make sure you give it a little roll so it doesn't, it's kind of got an elasticity to it, but you want to make sure that you're going to flip this over enough that you get your flavors in. So I'm going to go in once. Okay. This is about 5 inches across almost the way I'm doing this, but I'm pressing down as I go. I'm pressing in. This is how we're making that swirl that goes inside that they call the elephant's ear. Pressing down again. I'm going to come in one more time on each side, and then I'm going to flip it in half. There, and then I'm going to cut them. That's why this is basically could be faster if I was faster. So then I'm going to bring it over. I don't want to tear the dough. It's not going to. It's really elastic. So you can see I've got my scrolls ready to go. And I'm going to bring that over one more time so they're facing each other. And I'm going to press, make sure I got my dough lined up. And then I'm going to check the cream puffs in the oven because I can have a nice smell right now. Okay, so now these are going to be small cookies, but again, you do this in a large way, you can make larger cookies. So I'm going to cut about maybe a half inch all the way down. And I'm going to do this very quickly so you can see how fast we have to be in the bakery because time is money and the oven's waiting. So I'm going to move them over onto my sugar. Again, you can see that it's got this little tiny, that's the palmier design. And I really like to try my best to get them all facing the same direction because it makes it easier for me and I can fit more on the tray. I don't necessarily want them to touch, but I do want to give them a little press down so they don't fall over. Because you want to be careful if you're making them really large. Again, these cookies can be baked very much in advance. Then you can take them off and put them, keep them in a dry container. The next thing to do with that, if you find that they're not comfortable or they're too soft because of time and age and the moisture they start to absorb hygroscopically, there. Now, did anyone need me to show you that one more time? Because I can do that definitely one more time. Because we can make a little bit larger. But I want to get these as I can do this. I'm doing partial sheets because I got only so much room in the oven. But I want to be able to give them a little press. I don't have to put more sugar on top of them because here's what you need to know. The side that's facing the down pan side is actually your showpiece side. It's going to be beautiful and shiny with crystallized sugar. So I'm going to get this into our oven. I know I'm leaving a lot of sugar on here. Just bear with me because I want to make sure you can
Chef,
see all.
We do have some individuals that would like to see that again. And then also for the rolling pin, you mentioned oiling your pin. What oil would you recommend?
Oh, I use a really nice olive oil. I did look and see, there is food oils. I'm going to pull out the cream puffs just because it looks like they're getting nice and toasty. I want everyone to see our cream puffs. Second. Now, what's important here is that you have, temperature wise, I want to make sure that they're not raw inside. So I've got these cream puffs. Again, I will cut them open. I will put a filling in them. I will get a pierced pastry bag with custard and I will fill them from the bottom side. You can see that they're brown on the brown on the bottom. You can even see the design, and I got them moving a little bit there. That way we know they're not sticking, because I did put that sugar on them. So the one without the sugar but with the egg wash is right here. And they're just an individual size. That's pretty hot, so I'm going to take that off. So absolutely, I'd gladly show you again. Now the olive oil, again, much like seasoning your wrought iron pans that you use and you keep oiled, you don't want the oils to go rancid, but I'm using this often. Once you have your bakery, your rolling pins, you don't want to wash them in soap and water, because anytime you have your wood instruments and your wood tools soaking up water, you don't want that at all, because it really does distort and warp them. So I just want to show you, this one is used for pasta rolling. It just happens to be that you have it on the outside, but a lot of times you're still rolling as if you're doing clay, or when we're rolling out cookie dough, you want to start from the beginning and roll your hands out so you put the weight distribution on your dough. So we'll go ahead and do this right here. Again, I've got this is just the same egg I cracked earlier for the cream puffs. It's going to get this right on here. I'm doing it on the parchment because it does make it easier for cleaning. And I can actually use the cutting board for another item that I want to show you guys. And we'll get the Madeleine dough made next. Was there any other questions I didn't answer? I apologize if I skipped over something, but I want to be able to show you this process really. Now, again, you want cinnamon. I'm not a big fan. Traditional palmiers, or the French palmiers, is very much just sugar and a butter dough. There's a lot of beautiful palmiers that are out in the Bay Area that are baked. You could always ask, is this a butter dough? And you'll taste the difference. A lot of times people are using shortenings or levels of fat, because again, in your puff pastry, the idea is to have your solid fats cold, so you get those layers of fat that create the puff like a croissant. So I'm going to flip over. Again, I'm doing that egg wash again. The substitute for an egg wash, again, you can use the flaxseed, ground flaxseed that you can chop up in your coffee grinder. And just, I believe it's 3 tablespoons of water to 1 teaspoon of flaxseed. That's the egg substitute. That's what I'm talking about here. Okay, we're getting our sugar on the second layer, on the second side, my apologies. I'm going to just I'm putting my hand very lightly over the top just to make sure I'm getting it coated. I do want to press a little bit. I can see that my sugar, I just opened this bag of sugar, so it's a little lumpy, but that's just the moisture getting a chance to tell me I got a chance to get it all in there, all on the edges. This batch, again, we'll get our parchment ready. Oops. Grab another baking pan here. I know this one we can put just directly right on the silk hat. There. I have about 2 dozen, just because I don't want to wait for them to get cleaned off. Get lazy. I get lazy. So I want to be able to do that. This time I won't put the sugar, because there'll be enough sugar on the cookies themselves. So we'll get a chance to do that. Let me get that rolled up and cut. That way you can see the difference between the two. This time I'll just go in. I'm pressing. You can see my finger marks. I'm pressing to get that inside. Is it enough sugar? Do I still see egg? Shiny, shiny egg. So I want to make sure I'm covered up here. And I'm going to fold this one in. So you can do this even faster, just in 2 ways. And then over the middle. Therefore, you just have a 3-fold. 2 in, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of that palmier. I'm going to let that rest a second while I roll this one in, making sure I've got plenty. Don't want it to stick. Got my both sides. And
Chef, the Petridge Farm dough, that could just be purchased at any grocery store.
Exactly. Those are the ones that come in the freezer section. You can find different stores, different levels of quality of store will give you different types of dough. Let's see if I can do this with my right hand so you can see what's happening. Again, I'm not worried about that itself. I'm trying to get them kind of even. I'm a little slower with this side, so I'm sorry. There, and this is, again, now you've got the threefold. Last time we had more of a turn, and you can actually, so we'll get this on. Whoop. I'm better off with my left hand. Again, I did give it a press. We can double check our cookies in the oven right now. Again, you can use a chef's knife to do this. And I'm gonna put this down and press so it stays, because if I don't do that, the cookie itself will roll over and you'll get a very strange, like an odd peacock trying to escape from your baking pan effect. A lot of times you put them as close together as you can because then they help each other rise together. So we're gonna get this on our baking pan so we don't keep you waiting, because we got lots more to learn, or come to my class on Mondays and we do lots of different things. I've been doing them for 1.5 years now, and we did palmiers about, well, probably last year sometime, but we get around holiday time and we'll do assortments of cookies. And actually, I think we're planning to do something fun where we learn to actually, I have some friends who do beautiful cookies that they decorate with beautiful icings like tie-dye effects, and you can write names on them. I've done letter writing for these. Okay, so I want to give them a little press over the top. I'm not going to egg wash them again. Again, my bottom side will be my show side. And then that wonderful word we learned from a lot of the baking shows, the showstopper. I'm going to move my parchment. I can actually use this for the next batch of cookies. Even though it has egg on it, I have plenty of sugar. So I'm going to put this in our oven and get this size done. And maybe these will pop out. Put them on the top shelf. Let's show you what's happening with the palmiers that already went in the oven, as our pie doesn't need to be touched, but we're starting to see them uncurl a little bit. I want you to see they're not even blonde, but they're uncurling. See, they open up. So that's why you want to squeeze them together to make sure they stay just like that. Again, most of the time you'll see your palmiers. I know there's some wonderful Goldilocks, other companies that make palmiers for every day, and sometimes they're individually packaged. Those kinds of things, I have to say, most likely they are made with lard. So that's a difference in flavors that you want to take a look at. I'm going to I see that now I have something for plating. I made it's a berry coulis to be able to plate our desserts. So I want to be able to show you other things that you don't really think about in your home for dessert making, is things like, how about layering Jell-O parfaits like we used to have? Very, uncomfortable maybe because it's a diet. I like to have sugar-free Jell-O and things like that for myself and get a chance to do that. I want to be able to make, with my recipe here, the madeleines, if that's something that everyone's interested in. I'd love it when you get a chance to. I also included, and Lewis knows this, I included a microwave chocolate mug cake. Now, this is a recipe you make at home in your own microwave. It's very simple, but again, don't we want that just little moment of sweetness? Again, you can add liqueurs, you can add soaked raisins, you can add all kinds of wonderful things, whatever you create here. This happens to be a chocolate one. So that's just an opportunity to make it home for yourself really quickly. 1 minute, 45 seconds in the microwave. It says to make a healthier version, you can use applesauce and water instead of milk. So these are, you still get the same effect. I noticed that last year, that there was companies making cake mugs mixes that you would buy already. So again, here we go. I'm gonna move our tarts. I'm gonna put this in the fridge just for a little bit. So I'm gonna it's pretty warm in the kitchen here, so. All right.
And that tart should be refrigerated.
Absolutely. I was keeping it out for you to see, but yeah, it needs to be refrigerated. And you've got whipped cream, and I'm going to show you, this is like soften. I just kept my butter out to soften. I want to be able to grab my fun pastry brush. I use this just for baking. I happen to keep it out, on purpose because I want to be able to use these. Let's see if I've got it's brand new. So I'm going to get butter in here. And I can, and again, if I'm making chocolate madeleines, I can use cocoa powder instead. I'm going to get it right inside. I don't necessarily want to melt the butter because it will separate, and I want to keep it cool as soon as I get the dough in there. So even though it's a Silpat, it should be able to be a quick release setup. I want to guarantee that I get all that buttery flavor. And are there any questions so far to catch up on? Because we'll take a look at the palmiers, we'll take a look at the pie with the lattice work on it. And let's get these in here so we can make a batch of madeleines. This is a medium-sized madeleine. You know, you can find them also. Wonderful companies pre-make them. You know how fun we have when we get them, those individually wrapped ones from Costco. I tell you, that saves any type of fast party you put together. Having those available are just wonderful. Again, you can take those out, melt some chocolate, and half dip them or quarter size, dip them at an angle. Have fun with that and just get them, you know, make them your own. There's other icings that you can use, even a royal icing, something like that. I'll show you something that Wilton makes that's for cookie dough. I'm just going to see, make sure everything's covered up. So we've got our butter, making sure we start from scratch so we have everything ready to go. Other baking pans, we have it ready to go. Right, so our dough is the next thing to make. Now, a lot of times you'll see different madeleine recipes will say, please make this the night before, much like a crepe batter. You get a chance to have that opportunity. The crepe batter would be great. I'm going to grab a towel here. There we go. All right, so I can make, again, you can take a look at the recipe you receive. You've got preheat the oven to 375, madeleine molds like this one or the larger one. You will have to decide how long it takes. They actually make miniature ones that are about 1.5 inches. I actually let someone borrow that mold, so I couldn't use it for you today. They're little miniatures, so they're only no more than 1.5 inches, and they give a nice puff to them. So you get these cute little things when you're making petite desserts. You know, say for example, you'd like to have a tea, and you end up making some wonderful lemon curd and some clotted cream. So again, we want to keep this recipe as simple as possible. I usually like to do it, again, they want us to sift, sift our flour for this one. So I want to be able to do that with you. So we're going to do that together. So one more thing. I have my melted butter ready. I just have to get me off the oven here. So close, it's really hot. There. I want to be able to show you this here. And when you want to decorate, say for example, you want to decorate your madeleines. I found, this was from last holiday season. I found these, and you actually buy the little cookie dough the cookie icing coming in many flavors. I am not a promoter of Wilton, but I just was so surprised when I found it. So you microwave it for a few seconds, no more. It gives you all the instructions. I'm glad it's in a couple of languages, which is really great. I'm noticing it's really important. 15 to 20 seconds. I just used these the other day for a kransekake, which I'll show you what that is. It's a Norwegian wedding cake where you're making cookie molds and tiers, but you get this blue and a white icing instead of making a royal icing, which might be uncomfortable to learn how to make that. So I have my Silpat has many other purposes. So one of them is for, when I'm measuring my flours and things like that, I want to get everything ready. So I want it all sifted together. Flour, here we go. I measured. So this is only asking, this is a small batch because it's only giving you a dozen. So I've got a 1/2 cup of flour. I want my lemon zest. Again, do you have a zester at home you can use? You can do it by hand with your vegetable peeler. And I have a microplane I like to use. Today, instead of lemons, why don't we do orange? So I've got an orange here, a beautiful washed orange. I've got my microplane. It's actually an original wood rasp. So I'm going to have that ready to go with my batch of dough. I want to be able to mix. Oops. Get my dough in the mixer. Because I also can use a blender for this, just like I do a crepe batter or a Dutch baby batter. I don't know if everyone knows what that is. Dutch babies. Again, I'm gonna go make myself do this the right way here because I always try to jump the gun and speed things up. Move things off the stove. Get my carts ready to go. Now I wouldn't suggest, and I did try this before with my other silpats, with this particular Madeleine mold, that you want to, I'm gonna take a peek in the oven here and see how we're doing. That you can use a canned spray, but I would say you can also sugar it with white sugar, cocoa powder, like I said before. Flour isn't so pretty because you don't want it to clump up on your cookie. And my butter went. Where'd my butter go? Oh, there you are. So I want to have my melted butter ready to go. Now, again, you don't want to use your, if we're saving energy, what's best, the oven or the microwave? So I don't want my butter to be too hot, but I do want to have it available and melted. So I'll do that. I have unsalted butter. And a lot of people ask the difference between salted and unsalted. For most baking, you want the unsalted because you want the sugar to enjoy all that wonderful fat, and use the sugar and the vanilla. Just give it 30 seconds. Yes. I'm going to wash up my hands from all the egg wash I have on my fingers while the butter's microwaving. I'll sing happy birthday a couple times. See whose birthday is it today? Not mine. Voila. So I'm going to just dry up because so we're going to connect here with this particular dough. Again, 2 eggs. They're asking us to melt the butter and beat the eggs, vanilla, and then be able to add the sugar. Then we'll be adding the butter and then the flour. Okay. So I've got most of it's melted. You can see that's 30 seconds. Do one more time. I don't want it too hot, but I could let that, give it about 10 more seconds. And we have a spatula. Get ready in our eggs. And we don't want to make clarified butter. We still want the solids to stay together as best we can. Here we have, there we go. The pieces are still melting. Okay. And then we'll get our oven ready. Now, what I do want to say is the things I use to be able to use when I make my dough is use a ice cream scoop. This one is about 1.25 inches across. They're numbered usually by size. That one doesn't have one, but I'll show you the other. My purple is my cookie dough size. So this one, usually Volrath or a couple others, is stainless steel. I get a chance to have that, and you can find them at any of the fun stores, any of the other supply stores, even over on, if you're in the city, on Clement Street, for example, Cam A is right there between 6th and 7th. But I lived over that way. I grew up over there. So I always loved going to see what they had. And these come in about 6 to 8 different colors. So each size is a different color. And that way you can have your biscuits or muffins, you can have all that ready to go and make it easier for portioning out your items. Okay. Okay, we're going to put our mixing blade in here. Where did we put it? Pardon me. I'm going to reach over. I'm going to put it in our mixer and move our Madeleine pan. Steady. Don't say. Okay, how are we on time, Louis?
We have about 10 minutes. I think what we could do is we could run late with this, and then the recording, for those that need to run, the recording will have the remaining the remaining of this recipe. So, and then we'll allow for questions afterwards if people would like to hang out once all the recipes.
Absolutely.
So we're good.
Okay, so I've got my mixing bowl, my KitchenAid here. Let's get some more better view here for you. So we've got the KitchenAid, we've got the 2 eggs in. mix just slowly. And my vanilla working. So it's asking for its vanilla. Now again, you can see, measurements are moot to me because I've been doing it for so long. But again, it's only asking for a 3/4 of a teaspoon, so not even a full teaspoon. This is my special jar of vanilla I've had forever. Again, I've got vanilla beans inside. I add vanilla to it, even some whiskey, depending on batches that I make. But again, the vanilla beans are all sitting at the bottom. So I shake it up usually. I just, everybody has a way of keeping their own.
And Chef, just so that you know, with the mixer running, we can't hear you. So
I noticed that because the pan people shook so much that the pan fell down. So I'm going to do that. I want to do a double check on our palmiers. Okay, I'm going to turn the camera here. And so we got our first batch of palmiers. There's the first batch. You can see they're going to be really hot because this oven is at 400. And then I'm going to pull out the second batch that we did. You can see they're going to be popping open, but you're looking for palmiers that stay together. I didn't squeeze it hard enough, obviously, and was working really fast, so they splayed open. So you want to keep them. Again, I'm going to try to, those of you that have to go, that way you can see that the other side is going to get more blonde. We really want that blonde, golden, beautiful. Again, if you want to be able to have your oven at 450 and you just watch them more carefully. Okay, here's our pie on the bottom shelf. So I've got exterior color. I'm getting the top color. There we go. And see our pie is in our oven getting golden. Again, I did put that sugar on the top, so it should get even more golden. And I'm keeping it on the bottom shelf because I want the cookies on the top where it's hotter. And it's, again, usually you're doing one purpose, one item at one time. You're not trying to do this oven thing. Last when we did entrees, I had like 7 different things in the oven. So it's important to just keep going and give it a try while we're learning today.
Chef, can you just give us quickly the temperatures for each of the items that you baked if you were baking them alone? Because I know that they tend to be at a higher.
Yes, palmier. Yeah, you want the palmiers usually 400, 425. The cream puff dough, it can be more like 375, 350. It really depends on how much rise you want to give to it. We'll go into that. I want to be able to show you. Here, we're going to cut one. Just very carefully, I want to cut it open. Because again, you can cut it open like, no, don't pay attention to the lady in the pink. I'm going to grab another. But anyway, so I can poke it. But again, using when we're using, it's important. If you have a small serrated blade, that's easier too to cut them. Again, you can cut them just so they wedge open, or you can cut them where the whole top is separated, but that's what you want to look for is that cooked dough. So you have all that nice aeration inside, but it's not raw looking and it has a nice spongy texture. It's going to be very eggy when you eat it if you'd like to eat them by themselves, because it is mostly eggs and flour and butter, but you're going to get that wonderful flavor. So what do you add? What do you see yourself adding to it? Like a chocolate pastry cream, just whipped cream with some cocoa powder and some sugar. Just keep it simple. You get that light texture from that too. So I know we're going to finish the Madeleine dough real quick.
For the little puff pastries, I've actually used like a rabbit rillette on them if you want to go savory with them.
Say that again with rabbit. I love rabbit. Go ahead.
Oh, a rabbit rillette.
Oh, wow. Yes.
So it's kind of like a tuna chicken salad or something like that, a fancy chicken salad. That's really good for little sandwiches and stuff like that, little appetizer sandwiches that can be passed. Oops.
I'll make sure while you were talking, I put myself on mute. We're gonna make it work. So we have, we're gonna be adding the sugar to the dough. We get a chance to, I'm gonna go through because I wanna make my orange zest again. And then the butter, adding, at the very end, I add the butter. You're right, actually rabbit or beautiful rillettes, you can actually buy these things at really beautiful gourmet stores, have them ready to go. I can't recall the names of the companies right now, but again, you get a chance to have that ready to go. These are things you can make confits at home, even if it's chicken or something with a bone on it, where you get these wonderful flavors from the bone itself. Even if you use chicken wings, the drumettes, only that size, and you slow cook them in the oven, and you keep all that chicken fat over the top to keep them nice and safe. Just like we were talking about, I'm glad Lewis mentioned that, because again, I love rabbit. You can buy frozen rabbit, and it's really healthy. My grandmother tricked me. I think I told you guys this before. My grandmother tricked me because she raised rabbits and pigeons over in Tiburon, where she was, and she said it was chicken. So I believed her about 50 years ago, and there you go. So this is the zest of a whole orange. I'm going to put that in my mixer. I'm just doing that as I was showing you. I actually, you'll see a lot of chefs do this. I find that dangerous because I've actually slipped. So what I do is hold the rasp and I pull the rasp where I want it to go on the orange at an angle, moving my wrist only. I turn the fruit and I pull and draw and get those sections. This is a very dangerous tool if you're not paying attention. Just like mandolins, you always want to keep your eye on what you're doing. Lessons learned, don't know if that's going to help you understand. Been there, done that. So, in going through the rest of the recipe, again, you're going to sift. We have the flour that we're going to sift. I'll bring you back down to the board. We're going to sift the flour very quickly onto our silpat. I'm using this just like I would a paper towel or a parchment paper that I can use to make sure that that's going to be okay. Again, I've got eggs, vanilla, salt. It's 1/3 cup of sugar and 1/2 cup of the flour. I put the orange zest in. Again, I can put some orange flavoring, and I've got the 1/4 cup of butter ready to go. So slowly, I want to be able to put this. I'm going to try to do this quickly so you don't have to worry so much, but I want to get that butter in there. I want to get the flour in there slowly, and then I'm just going to put it all in, because we just want to avoid the lumps. That's why they want you to do things slowly or in parts here. So we've got our mixer. I'm going to see if you guys can see that. The butter going in.
Chef Lorraine, so we didn't hear that while you were while the mix
Okay,
was
I
on.
just didn't want it to take too long, so I was trying to do it fast. So our Madeleine dough is ready, our batter. I want to be able to show you that in the mixer. You can see in the kitchen here, I've got so many tools on the table, I tell you, it's a lot. So I've got my extra large mixer, my next regular size mixer, and then of course there's tabletops, but I've got a lot of tools here to use to help everyone see that it does, if I'm doing massive batches, I have to alternate, because again, I've got one mixer that I've got for egg whites that I need to make sure that bowl is clean. So I get these nice clean egg whites from there. I'm going to grab our Madeleine pan. And then that way we have all our mix together. I'm going to take that out. This is these KitchenAids are the ones that have the locking, locking bowl in the side with an arm. So I want to make sure that it's going to be okay. Hello. Oh no, that's just the color of the silpat. Making sure I've got my batch. Where's my spatula? Okay. Then I get my spatula here. Get my dough, but again, if I want to use I'm going to be able to put that and get that in the oven. So while we're answering questions, we can watch things. My spatula, making sure I've got it all mixed in. Again, this batter is going to be loose. If you have the time to make these things ahead, of course, keep them in. I wish I could show you this because you can see a glass bowl if I had, but this is easier to look at. And again, I'm going to take my batter mix. I can smell the orange zest, and I don't want to overfill, but I want to get in there because it will pop up and puff. I'm going to actually just do can everybody see that? Okay. Again, if you have 2 teaspoons, something like that, 2 tablespoons, try to keep your hands clean while you're working in case you're going in and out of the oven with other batches of things. This is, not that everyone's going to be in mass production, but guess what? Holiday time, that's what we're doing. We're doing that. We're getting ready to have our cookie party. We're getting ready to have a cookie exchange party is what I mean to say. So again, this recipe called for only 12, but this Madeleine pan is a smaller frame. So I'm going to get more than 12. And we'll get that right into the oven. And we'll probably be able to pull our palmiums out.
Chef,
Yes.
Madeleines, they tend to be, kind of like cake-like. So is this a cake batter, and can you use it for a cake? Or, what makes it different from a cake batter?
Absolutely. So the amount of butter and the fact that it stays so nice and moist, I'm going to say I have a little bit left in my bowl here. So I can finish up this Madeleine. And they're going to rise, but they're considered a cake. We call them cookies here in America, but they're actually tea cakes, as if you were making something like a lightened pound cake, because the pound cakes have lots of fat in them too, a lot of oil, a lot of butter. You get that softness from it. But I really like the fact that we can keep it as a cake, a tea cake in the seashell shape that it is. I want to make sure that I'm using up my batter. And then I might have taken a little too much. I might have put a little too much into some of them myself. I see that. And then my own little hurry. So I can actually get a lot more out of there. So we want to be able to get them in there. See, it's not so pretty, but it will be when it comes out because I did butter everything. So the silicone will be able to give it that choice. I'm going to get the big hot pads out of for getting things out the oven. And I want to say regarding Madeleines, again, it's not necessarily everyone's way of making. There's our beautiful golden palmiers. There's my spatula. There we go. So again, your spatula, you're going to keep them and just let them cool a little bit, but you can see that they're just going to be so beautiful and golden. And you can see there's a shiny side. Let me get the other pan out because those are going to be a lot darker. Here we go. These are our darker ones that were in before on top of sugar. And don't be surprised if they stick together like that while you're trying to release them. So don't worry about releasing them right away. But this is what I'm going to show you about when I'm in a hurry, when I'm trying to do things in a hurry. Here's my 2 pans in my oven. I can just lift up this parchment or my silk hat and move it right on top of this one. So that's not smashing the cookie at all, but it does get things out of the way so I can get into the oven with the Madeleine. There we go. All right. So I'm going to get a chance to put that there and have them cool down. Don't have a commercial kitchen, but we're having fun in this one. So I want to show you the pie. Can we see that? Here's our pie. It's still brown around the outside. It's getting more golden here. What I'm going to do is actually lift it and move it to the top shelf so I can get some more color on the top. That's sometimes you don't want to do that. If you have a baking pan, you're doing great that you just lift up, and I'm just lifting up the silicone because I don't want the bottom of my oven to be syrupy. And I think I'll have to stop there just for the moment, I think. Does that sound about right, Louis? As you get to know,
all I gotta say is
information.
Wow, there's a lot of stuff happening in your oven right now, and I wish we were all there.
Absolutely. So again, I've got more puff pastry dough that I can use. The pâte à choux, again, choux dough or puff dough. They have a lot of different names. Again, we made these little tiny ones. Again, lemon curd, whipped cream mixed together. Don't make it very heavy what you're putting in there. You have some beautiful jam. Look at how you can just keep them in the freezer, bring them back out, put them in the oven for 5 minutes just to bring them and refresh them. As they do last It smells so wonderful. And again, not very much sugar. What you fill it with is up to you. If I missed any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. I will, did I put that in the chat? I'm sorry. I'll put that in the chat for everybody. So it's Chef Lore or Chef Lorraine at, where is it? gmail.com. And you can reach me there. I also have Yahoo at the same address. Either one works fine. You can contact me, Chef Lore or Chef Lorraine. It's something that I've been enjoying answering people's questions online. And if you have any questions, please, at this time, we can unmute yourselves. I have you on gallery so I can see you. That would be great if you'd like to just speak up or speak behind your beautiful photographs you have here that are great.
Chef, how long are you going to cook the madeleines?
Madeleines usually only take about 14 to 15 minutes. This is, remember again, there are 3 sizes of pans that I know of. So you get ones that are like 1.5 inches, 3 inches, and then the big black mats I showed you, those are like 4.5 inches or so, that big black mat I got from, and actually, I had to say it, I found a lot of things on Amazon and eBay. So eBay, keep a lookout for things that you might, that you can find that are unique. Sometimes I want to show that when you're doing for the cream puffs, for example, here's the top, and then you have your bottom, which you've cut up, but you can actually just glaze chocolate on the top, cocoa powder the top separately, then put them on later. If you ever get to look at an older La Technique video from Jacques Pepin, where he does the beautiful cream puff swans, he actually makes necks, cuts the very top of the cream puff is cut in half. That makes the wings on the side of the cream puff. You can actually see the filling. It's a beautiful thing. And actually they're more plated individual dessert size, where you can make your cream puffs any size. One technique I do want to enforce is when you're actually piping that cream puff dough on top of your baking pan, that you actually are pushing and you keep it solid till you're ready to lift up. And that's why we were using the egg wash to push that point down, because that's going to get blackened before the actual cream puff will bake. In opportunities, I'm going to do this right in front. In opportunities to make a swirl, you can try to do that. I have not been successful in all the years I was supposed to do it at Accarello. What happens is if I didn't get enough egg wash, this little, where I was swirling my little snowman, that popped open and flipped over. So it looked really funny, but it wasn't, definitely got eaten by the staff because it wasn't going out to the table. So again, you want to make sure you're portioning these things correctly and making them look pretty at the same time, if it's at that Michelin level that you are required to do as your job. But other than that, have fun with it. Because again, this same puff dough can be used as what's called a bicyclette, a French pastry, a cake itself, which is actually not a cake. Much like a Boston cream pie is not a pie. It's a cake with layers. So the bicyclette is a large circle of puff dough. And I'm sorry I didn't do one for you because it would take longer to bake. But you just do a large circle of your puff pastry dough, and then you leave that circle and bake it in the oven, egg wash it, of course. And then when it comes out, you let it cool. You cut it horizontally open, and then you fill it just like you would a large cream puff, but you're doing it in a circle. So bicyclette for bicycle wheel, that's exactly what it's designed for. It doesn't have to be chocolate. It doesn't have to be vanilla. But again, you know, use those options in your style of getting to have fun in the kitchen. In you know, cooking for Daniel and getting to know myself with the keto. So I have 2 different things I'm dealing with: my diabetes, no sugar and no carbs, and him with sugar. And so he gets to enjoy these things. And I get jealous, but I give it a try that I can hold my ground and stay healthier. Did anyone have any baking questions about the pie itself? The pie doughs, I can send on some pie dough recipes, but honestly, Google simple pie dough and make sure you're using butter. I would prefer butter than a shortening, but shortenings have its benefits in biscuits. Also, the fact that you can use half shortening, solid, and half butter. So you get those two different layers of rice, because remember what's happening in the dough is the cold dough has the little pieces of butter and flour and lard, etc., are in there when it's cold. When the oven hits certain temperatures, that's when that signals that particular fat to release itself, to get liquefied, to create steam, which causes those beautiful pockets. So when you're using melted dough, that's melted butter, that's very different than using a solid butter for your croissants and things like that. And plus you get to proof them because they're yeasted.